Hi, I'm working on my demonstration for the Oregon grape and some mixing of grains, and I'm using a Da Vinci 3 Petit Gris, and I'm going to be using a little bit of quinacridone Sienna, which is very bright, and I'm going to try that out as my yellow. It's a little bit more on the orangey side, but I want to see if it'll warm up what I want, and it'll work really well for my light colors here for the ferns that are quite dry. So we're going to start with a nice wash, just going straight across, wet wash. I should have wet the paper first, but that's okay. This is the very beginning. I've done some masking fluid. Okay, I'm just going to try and carry this color down. I'll pick up a little bit more color here. The reason I've done the masking fluid this time is I'm going to try and see if that's going to be easier in the demo to show, or if I'm going to have to do something else like wax or something to, or gel pen afterwards. But we'll start first with the quin. So quin is very much just like the burnt sienna. It has a little bit more of an orangey tinge to it. Okay. So the other thing I'm going to use is my Payne Phthalo Blue shade. So I'm just going to put that in. It's like a Viridian. It's very strong. I'll just show that to you in a sec here. You can only see the yellow. So there it is. So I'm now going to just pop that in and try and mix it with my sienna and see what oh yeah, this is exactly what I want. So what's happening is there you can see how that green is just kind of getting that tinge of color, which almost like a chromium. And I'll start in here because this is going to be where the darkest part is, just so that you can see. I'm going to see. I'd prefer to basically do a wash over top, but to just give a bit of a chance to see what this is like. Let's just go into some of these darker areas here, and down here, because I can always add a little bit more blue shade in here to create some of the real. Oh, that's a bit too staining. See, that's the problem. I haven't mixed it, but I'm just curious how it's going to blend. Now, because there's so much there, let's just quickly get some water and push this around. Aha, look at that. It's actually working the way I want it to. Okay, so let's push it up here too. Great. And push it into here as well. Okay, now we need to get it up in here. So let's just pick it up and pull it up in here. Okay, so now we have it very wet, very greenish. I'm just trying to see where more of the yellow is, because now we've taken it, we've got a lot of the green, the yellow, burnt sienna gone, and a lot of the other color in. So if I was to just bring this down, just to kind of give a feeling for some of these beautiful little areas on the stems, let's try and pull that in. And then there's definitely a problem here where there's some, so I'm going to pull that back in and see if I can get that darker green in there. Let's just drop that back in. Let that play around. That's more like the green I want way over here. More like it over here. But what I'm feeling I'm missing is that bit of yellow. That's just not coming through. So I've got some yellow here. There's this Hansa Yellow. Let's see if I can, if I pop it in, what happens? Do I get that kind of a feeling that I want? Is it separating? Let's just see. Because the burnt sienna has a bit more of the red in it. So technically with the blue shade and stuff, I'm actually getting a little bit more of the three colors that I'm looking for. I'm also looking to see the effect of some of these on my paper. The yellow is pushing aside the others, which is kind of fun. Because there's definitely more yellow in some of these areas here. I think what we kind of have to do now is let it rest, let it dry for a bit. It's very wet right now, so I need to somehow contain that. I could work on this little part here and try and make a nice dark. Now the way to do that is to mix the two colors together that I've been using, and if I need to add in a little bit of red, I'm really mixing it together, adding a little bit more of the quinacridone sienna there. Let's see. Now I made a shadow drawing with shapes to try and get a better feel for that. Let's pull that up here. So I'm looking to put in the darks in those areas where I've got those shadows. And that's not working for me, so I'm going to now take some Phthalo Blue and see what happens when I add some Phthalo Blue into this mix. It worked, but what I'm feeling is that there's a bit too much over there. So if I was going to do this correctly, I would take a dry brush, and I've just moved my cloth around somewhere. So I'll take it and find another one here. Okay. So see how it's kind of scooching into there? I want it. I don't want it doing that. So I've got to somehow lift. Look at that beautiful lifting. But see, it's not going to stay. It's too wet. I'm using Fabriano paper too, so I like the way it's playing here. Not too much puddling there. My image on my screen just disappeared. So again, we're waiting now for some of this water to just soak in and get a better feel. Some of this dark will end up in between here. There's even a little green up there, but I'm going to leave. I don't know if I'm going to put that green in there. I quite like that little bit of difference. I'll have to think about that. Okay, so when I went back, I had my burnt sienna. Now, burnt sienna and phthalo blue should make a really great gray. But this is quinacridone, so I'm not sure how it's going to react. Ooh, it's nice, actually. There it is right now. So it is a nice greenish gray right there, almost like a Parylene green. As opposed to if I was going to use the Phthalo green blue shade. Oh, look at that nice dark. Beautiful. So I'll just let that mix out here. Eventually, that will become my darkest dark. And at this point, I don't think it's all... Look at how wet that is. So there's no way I'm going to get that in there and be able to do anything. Now, I do have some darks over here. It's still very wet, but I just want to see if I put it through the center, what happens. Will it push out? how much will it dissipate? I'm using the tip of the brush. Trying to find the right places where it's supposed to. This two there, this is supposed to be darker here. That's not too much. There's a bit in here. There's one that comes down here a bit. And then just on the edge here. Well, that's pretty dry. That's nice. So it's still spreading quite a bit. Okay, and then there's another area up here that really needs dark. I'm leaving out that area where there's another branch coming across. I'm going to try and avoid that. Just leave the leaves coming down here. Just curious if I dab it in what it'll do. It's just too much water now, and so it's just pushing around. Okay. There's too much water there. I can see it. If I put any in here, it's not too bad. Because there's just basically an outline. So this is where you should be testing ahead of time as opposed to playing around with it now. But because I'm doing this for the demo, this is not bad to try it out. We were having a couple of dry days, so that too has an impact, although you wouldn't think so given how watery and everything this is all playing out. Because I'm not even going to be able to get into, look at if I touch that, it's going to spread around. Yeah, look at that. Because I want a bit of dark around those inner edges, but this is way too wet. Let's try it up here, because there's a dark bit here coming along the edge of the, that's not too bad. That might just dissipate enough for what I want. Let's continue working on that. I need a bit in between here for shadow. More shadow right in here. But here's really wet. Love the effect here, but that's not gonna necessarily stay. Yeah, it's just everything's pushing around now because I've used so many different colors. So up here should be a little bit darker too, so let's see if I can add that in. Okay, let's see now. There is the green right in between here. And another bit right in there. Just a little bit in there. Here a bit. Actually quite a bit here, but it's also a lot greener up at the top there. Okay, so now let's try some of the phthalo blue on it, so I'm just popping it in here and seeing what it does. Trying to see if there's particular shadows so that it'll push and darken it so that it looks deeper, cooler, further pushing it back. I'd like to see that in here too. Okay, just up in here. Ooh, that's looking nice. In this area in here. Right in there. Oh, now it's coming. Alright, so let's try and just do a bit of shadowing. So it's starting to dry enough that it's dissipating, but the color's holding a bit more. That's lovely. Okay. So I'm just trying to see if I really do want a lot more dark in this area, or if I'm going to have to just leave it now. Because it's just in here. And just a wee bit here. And then again down just the side here. Okay, that's great. Now, let's try and see. Just want you to see that. That's just, I'm just picking it up directly with a lot of water still on my brush. So now we're going to try and see what happens here. It's pushed it all the way so that I don't get the same kind of coloring, or if I have some effects still that I've got to work with. Okay, that's not bad. Let's try and add some in here. Bits of dark are just on the edge. Pull it out a bit more here. And then it lightens up. But it's dark again right along the edge of the leaf. Okay, so that's wet, quite wet still, as you can see as I'm pulling it around. Now this is all, look at that, all dry. And I've got to be careful because this is not as dark as that, so I've got to lift it a bit or push it around a bit. Because this is where it's really dark. So let's pick up that dark there. Try to keep some lights in between if I can. And just over on this side too. Okay. Oh, I've just used too much water again. Now I've just got water effect. Let's try it here. That's kind of more what I wanted. And I'd like a little bit more of that yellow in there, so let's see if that works. This is supposed to be looser down here because it's more in the background but darker. This could be just a wee bit greener, which just needs a little bit of phthalo blue in that yellow, which will make it a bit brighter greener. Don't know why my brush keeps doing that. Okay. Now I have enough, let's see if I can mix it up, to bring it down. Ooh, look at that. Oh, I love that. That's great. What I'd like is to keep the veins, but I don't know if I'll be that successful. This is lighter, so I'm going to lift here. And lift a little bit more in here. That's good. This side doesn't even need really anything. It gets, there's a little bit behind the here. Oh, that's okay. I can go all the way around here. And here. I'm going to watch the droplets because they're a lot lighter than the rest of the whole process. Okay, a little bit more underneath here. I can add just a wee bit of blue, like this. No, not enough. That's good. We'll put that in there too. Not enough. Too dark still, or too wet. That's working. Okay. That is to what I'm going to take a wet brush and I'll work on that in a minute. Just try and soften and pick up some extra colors in here. There's a little bit more that comes out. I'm just going to have to soften it. I don't want it to be too dark. Okay, and here, there's a bit more back here, even in the water droplet a bit. Okay, now let's just see. Oh, there's a little bit more up here. A little bit more yellow. That's it. Around that area there. Around that area here. Here a bit. Oh, I'm really surprised why the brush is doing that. Okay. Clean the brush. And now I'm going to just carefully with the water, just pull and soften. Pull and soften. Here's fine. Let's pull and soften here. Here. Okay. That needs to be darkened. So let's take some of this and pop it in there. not so much here in this side, maybe a bit there. This still needs a lot of work. Now, I actually have a bit that I should be carrying up into here. It disappears behind what will be eventually the frame. This could be a little bit darker now here. There's actually a different leaf, believe it or not. I don't think I'm going to be able to capture that properly. Right in there. And this needs to be darkened too. Too much water. Okay, I'm going to take a break, let it dry, because it's working, but it's becoming now a wait and play type of thing, and I have to, I think now, just let it dry, and then I can work on some of the more, I can spray again and do all that kind of stuff. But if I don't, if I'm not careful, I'll lose some of that nice lightness that I want, because I want those darks in between, but I also want the transition. Just see here now a little bit that I can pop in here for transition. Just to transition a bit there. A bit more in here. And here. Okay. Even bring it out just a bit more in here. I have to soften that up now. This, I lost this with too much water. Okay, let's clean that brush up. Soften. That's it. That's way too wet. Okay, I have to take a break. Alright, we're back again. Now I'm going to be working with a much smaller brush, and you can see how everything's really dried and become much lighter. There's my smaller Petite Gris, the 3 of the 0. And I also have to remove the masking fluid. I can't find my special eraser for this. It's here somewhere. So there's a couple things you can do. You can use your finger, but be careful because your finger has oils on it, and so therefore they can then stay on the paper. But I'm just going to be a bad boy and just do it. It also burns your finger if you have too much masking fluid on there. And as you're feeling around for where the masking fluid is, you just kind of I was talking about oils, and I've just put my whole hand over there, so it's like, okay, make sure you wash your hands before you do this thing. And I'm trying to just make sure that I feel, and if there's any raised areas, that I try and take them off. The eraser is so much better for this. I got this nice white area right in there I have to fix. Oh, there's another little bit. Okay. Great. Alright, because we have a lot of things we'll have to soften up and do some. But first I'd like to just go straight in with a little bit of the darks, because I want to try and recreate that good dark. Now I could go to a Payne green, but I'm trying to stick to mixing. Payne green has some black in it, I'm trying to stick with the mixing of the colors that I've been using to keep it very uniform and unified, so that I don't have to worry about composition, whether or not it's a really good composition and it unified in terms of color. So we'll stick to that. So now, right around here, and you can see that I'm going to have to taper eventually with, I could taper this a little bit more, and could, you know, just give this a little bit more varied look here. Taper that, come around, do that same thing here, taper it, taper that. Now what you're seeing is really quite a strong line. So the only way to get rid of that line, once I've got it all corrected, is to come back in and soften it with another brush, or just, this is really wet, I cleaned it, and you just go in with the water and just pull the color out a bit to soften it up. Because otherwise it'll look too much like a line. And there is, it's just the way the shadow is cast. Okay, so that's part of it, that's good. Now with the whites out, we'll start with putting in the shadows around. Some of the shadows are here, but we're going to have to really go in. And I'm going to go in with the Phthalo Blue here. There we go. We get a good deep shadow there. Now what happens, depending on where the sun is coming from, in this case the sun is coming that way, the shadow will be cast below it and also on the inside over here. But on my photo, you see a little line all the way around. I need more water. And the shadow changes, the color changes too. There's a little bit of dark green in it that is reflected from, say, another leaf that's up above. So there's all things like that we have to take in consideration. There's even a bit of shadow in here where the white is. That's the reflection of the sun coming through. We can soften that a bit. There's even it's almost like it's 2 drops underneath another drop. It's weird. But it could be just a reflection of something else. I don't know. And it's a little greener there. So I'm just going to go in with a bit of yellow mix in here. See if I can get that bit of green I want. A little water. You can't see it. So I've taken my mix that I've had here, I've added the yellow to it to try and just tone it down a bit, but warm it up a bit. Because I want the dark blue to kind of get the feeling of the depth. So I'll just soften that up with that other color. And then I'm going to come in around here, over here, watch that white. Because there's a bit of a reflection in between there. And then I'll soften it up a bit. And a little bit more in here. And you've got to think about that there's contours, so that's why you're getting a bit of difference in the water droplet. So now I'm going to just try and soften that a bit. And the other thing I can do is I can take some titanium white, and because there's a little bit of a white glaze on it, but that right now, if I do that, it's just going to muck it up and make it very, what's the word I'm looking for? Very loose and opaque. So we'll work on that in a bit. Now I'm going to just work on this raindrop here. I'm just looking here to see how much darker I want some of these areas to go. And since I have the dark on there, I'll pop in a bit more dark in some of these areas here. A little bit more of that blue. Try trying to get that depth. You know, there was so much more of an edge here with the leaf, and I just can't seem to get that really nice dark, dark, dark edge, and then it kind of filters off, and there's a bit of a bite in here, and then it comes out again. Has that there where it's been, and there's a bit of shadow around here too. And then it comes out, actually it comes under, and there's a bit more shadow here, a bit more shadow in there, especially on that side. Not as much shadow, and then the shadow comes here where the raindrop is. It's almost like there's a second raindrop here somewhere, but you don't see it all. Just got a bit of a blue feel to it. And even here is a bit more kind of a drop there. And I'm darkening this. And this can be even darkened a bit more, and then softened up a bit with water. Okay, this is too sharp. Soften's necessary here. Just want to soften this edge because you're not really seeing well into the photograph what's down below, but it just, we know that there's different levels of whatever's going on, plant life underneath there. Here needs definitely more dark, so I'm going back in with the blue. I'm going to try and get that darkened. Here definitely needs darker. Tapered a little bit too. It's a bit of a water droplet. I'm just going to leave it as it is. I can green this up a bit. It's gotten a bit too Queen Sienna. Okay. That could also be greened up a bit. Okay. All right. Now, some of these appear to be more gray around the, so I'm going to mix a bit more of a gray with the blue. All right. Even put that little bit of a blue feel to it. I could even use turquoise. But then, see, I'm introducing something else, and the turquoise and the phthalo blue are pretty close together, so let's just keep working on shadows. And just remembering that raindrops aren't perfectly round, usually. touched something. Not sure what I was touching. Oh, and I just noticed that this is a bit strong here. Ooh. Where's the other one here? Nice and dark in there. Oh, a little too low here. This is also much darker in here too. Same thing here, we're just going to continue going around, trying to add in our little lines on our water. And I was debating whether I would do any real, I'll just show you, I'll just do a couple of raindrops just without any white in them, just trying to get a little bit more of that area. What I was trying to say was, I'm not sure if I want to have like a line down here. Don't want it that detailed, although I'm doing quite a bit of detail when it comes to the raindrops. Because there's another vein area, and if I start doing the vein, I have to start adding in extra color, which will really change things. So I don't know that I want to do that because I love what I've currently got. I could just give a hint. Because the last thing I like is to do just these lines. I want it to more normal, real. And also the transitioning between colors, so eventually this is a little darker. This is pretty good. More blue. It's a bit too dark. Although that blue actually helps to pop out our beautiful orangey Sienna there. So I don't know if we're going to see that. Try and get it closer to the blue to give a nice complement. I'll play with that a little bit more a little later. Continue to focusing on this. So as regards to the demo that I'm going to do, I have to really spend my time only doing a few raindrops because we'll never get through it all. And here there's actually this really interesting raindrop kind of comes down here, and another one kind of comes around, and there's a bit more green in between. Trying to see if there's some reflection of greens in there too. There's a bit of movement in here, a little bit darker. This looks a little grayish. And I just bring a tiny bit. Let that just play there for a bit. Okay, back to the top, or the middle, and we'll just keep working on trying to get these edges done. Okay, so I was finding that I was getting a little bit too aggressive in some of this area, so I softened it a bit, and I will come back in with some titanium to try and get a little bit more of that softening glaze. But I'm also going to put in another, since I have time, I'm going to put another bit of a water mark in here, because it was really quite interesting. It was showing a bit of a shadow along here like this, and a really dark shadow there, and then very light around the outside here where there was some reflection. It's lovely. A little bit more yellow in there too, which was interesting. And there was more yellow over here too. And around here actually. Now that I see it. So one of the things that I can do, I'm just going to soften that because it's not really... See that line there? I didn't really do anything about that line. So what I can do is try and lift that line out with a different brush. So you take it, wet it, lift it out, wet it again, lift it with a tissue. Keep trying to do that, and sometimes it's better with a more of a scrubby type of brush like this. Let's try that. This is just acrylic plastic, so that you've got a little bit more of a agent to try and lift. The other way to do it is make the lines and then actually have the Mr. Clean Eraser do that for you. Now, I did that here pretty much by really watching when I did the masking fluid, but I'm going to actually try and widen it a bit and soften it on the edge a bit so it doesn't look like just one little straight line. So let's try and add that in and then lift it up. So again, water, let it sit a little bit, and then lift it up. You can use a Q-tip to try and do that too. I'm just going to show you how I would do it with a Mr. Clean Eraser. You take a little bit of tape. I happen to have some tape here. This is masking tape. You take two little edges. Just try to look how it looks. Okay, there's one edge. Let's keep it a little uneven, make it more interesting. There's the other edge. Okay, and you wet a little piece of Mr. Clean Eraser, which I happen to have around here. Looks like that. You go in and you rub it right into the paper like that, and then you lift. And now you have a nice line that way. And so if I wanted to create a side line, I could do exactly the same thing. Lift it up, move it over here, and then just soften it in there and through the, just to get that feeling. Oh, that's a bit awkward. Okay. So I could also, you gotta be careful, because if I just soften this like that, it'll work, but I might get a lot more than I bargained for, because the color will move around. So I gotta be careful of that. Let's put a little bit of a vein that came around here, but started over here, and then kind of curved. So let's just lift that out, and then come over here. And see, that's a bit too straight, too daunting. So I'd rather not put too many things like that in. That I want to keep it more natural and organic, in the sense that it's not exactly straight, nothing else. So go back with the paint. I don't want to lose that beautiful lightness that I've got in this leaf compared to this one. So again, it's a struggle. So there's a shadow right along here. So I'm going to add that in. And then comes down just a tad. There's a bit of a shadow up in here. And there's kind of like little vein things like that. Not too much in terms of shadow here, maybe a little bit more on the inside there. Let's go back here and add a little bit more in here. Fix that there. Just trying to think of, again, the direction, making sure that you've got darker on one side than the other. And then, of course, trying to match it with the actual coloring of the leaves, so that do they pop? Looks like it in the video right now. I'm not sure, you know, so let's try and keep that. I'm going back over here a bit. Well, that was the other thing I noticed. There was a little bit of white that I lost, and I picked it up here, and I should soften this up here a bit more. But I could do two things. I could lift it. Let's try lifting it here. Remember, make sure you wash those every time because they'll keep the color in there and then you'll have a problem too. We won't be able to really get that color. Okay, so there it is there. That's a bit better. But I rubbed it a bit too much on the other side. And I've still got, I see problems here where I missed. So many things to think about, and it's even, there's a bit of softness after that. And I'm going to take a little bit of green, because it's more green than blue. Try and soften that a bit up. Because there is a little bit of, usually a little bit darker reflection in the raindrop too, where it's picking up a little bit of the leaf, maybe pulling it up a bit. Trying to see. The color carries over here a bit more, and here a bit more. It's fairly light coming down here. There's a little bit more in here, actually. It's actually a little bit darker here. I'm going to just use that yellow and see if that'll darken it up, or is it just too muddy now? So hard to tell. Now, if I was to take a black and white of this, I would be able to tell if there was any variation, because I did a black and white of the original photograph. So let me just show you what the black and white of the photograph, well, there we go, right there. So you can see how dark that leaf underneath there is compared to the darkness here. So let's try doing this. We'll take and make a picture now. Okay, so what we'll do, you just take it, you take the picture. Okay, so there's my photo, and then when you go in and you say edit, you just touch those things and it'll take you to your black and white. So you're going to see that, look at, that's darker than that. And that's okay, those are okay, that's okay, but that may be too dark compared to here, or I've got to even darken this up more. That's actually too dark. So, since it is too dark, what do I have to do? I have to go in and wet it and lift. And try if I can to get a little bit of that dark away. And then come back in here, maybe add a bit more of the dark in there. There we go. A little bit more down. Whoop. Now the one thing I didn't see, didn't do a line there. And again, you don't have to be as detailed in all the areas. You want to just kind of focus on one area, depending on what you're seeing. So let's bring the photograph back so I can look at it. And there was a bit of a vein in here which I kind of tried to keep. It's disappeared a bit. Alright, let's see if I can. Okay, that's not bad. I'm trying to get now just a bit more of the darks around. so many beautiful raindrops, and I just took a selection of them. Just fix up some of the darks in here. Okay, so now we're going to work on the bit of fern. We don't have to do a lot of detail. I just want to try and... I'm getting my color out here. I'm just going to gray it up a bit here. Brown it up in some areas. There we go. Okay. So the idea is I'm just going to get a few more things in here and try and add a bit of detail, but not too much detail. There's actually a bit of green in here too. Once you start looking, you can't stop finding. And when I say that, is that, you know, so there's green that comes in between here because there's some leaves down there, and then there's a little bit of reflection in where they twist, and then there's some nice darks in here where there's some shadows that come through. And you just have to let the eye kind of give you that wander, that feeling. You don't have to do it all. And it's just trying to get that balance. Where are you? Where's my... Let's get some of the brown in. a bit more dark in there. I'm trying to get that brown. Some of this is not even going to show up if I was to put the frame in, or put the mat around, sorry. A bit more in there. I hadn't thought of that. Using directly the burnt sienna, because that would be like red going in there to give you that really nice dark. But you'd have to do really lightly. Otherwise, maybe too much. I was thinking you could go in with a very fine broken line in here if you wanted to. Again, be very, very careful if you chose to do that. Let's add that nice shadow there. Be a little bit of shadow underneath there too. Okay, and I mentioned the titanium white. So let me find it, and we'll try it a little bit just to see how it affects everything. I don't think it'll work with the pencil crayon, but I'm going to try it just to give it. And this would be a watercolor pencil crayon, white. So I can put it in. If I make it wet, it will actually give me a stronger color. A little bit. It's giving it, certainly softening it a bit, because I'm trying to get that feeling. I think it needs more, personally, so I may have to go to a gouache. So this is watercolor pencil, a Durant. So if I was, let's see if I can, so if I can, oops, that's too much water. What I'm trying to see is maybe I need to sharpen it a bit. Better to sharpen it with a knife or something so you don't lose all that beautiful color. But right now I'm just going to try and I'm taking water and then trying to just get that little bit of a white edge on it. A little uneven. Where else was that? So that would be the other thing, to take that little brush that I had, see, and then try and put a little bit of water on there and then see if that gives it a bit more, oh, I don't know. Another option, you take your brush and with the water and go over the pencil crayon, trying to pick up the color. We'll see if that holds or if it just disappears. Okay, I'm going to stop and then I'll find the gouache. Okay, I've got Chinese white here, and it's with Winsor Newton. I'm going to take it directly out of the tube because otherwise I'm not going to have much success. So, here we go, back again. Now, yeah, it's not picking up anything there, so let's go back in and try and see. That's way too watery. So I'm going to have to squeeze it out and actually get some, because there's what I'm getting is the pigment, not the pigment, but the gum arabic at the top, and that'll happen too. So you can see now I've got it right here, and I'm going to try now mixing it up a bit more and getting it on that brush. Not be quite so liquidy, more pigment. Now that's way too much pigment. Okay. So the idea would be to try and go in, and again, just like with a pencil crayon, softening it up a bit if you needed to, and then coming back in with more color if you needed to. Now I'm going to try, there's a big spot right in here that looks like more water that came in. So I just want to see if I can make that look a little bit more interesting. I'm going to take my other brush with my usual suspect colors and try and create a raindrop reflection here that showed up. A little bit more of that greenish color in there. So it could be done that way too. It's so hard to know sometimes which is the best way to go about trying it out. There was definitely more white in here, and I lost a little bit of that white painting around. So the last thing that I would do would be gel pen, white gel pen, if I really found that I needed to add a bit of white dazzle. And I just had my gouache here. Where did I put it? It's probably not going to be where I want it anyway, so I won't try and do that. But I will check here. Let's go back in with that bit of pencil crayon and add just a little bit of white here that I kind of missed out on. It's almost like pastel a bit. And now I'll reinforce it with the Chinese white. That's too strong. So, gotta come back in with the dark again. So like I say, be careful for what you wish for, because it may not work exactly as you're expecting it to. Oh, there. Missing this here to really show that point there. Okay, that looks a little bit more realistic. There's a bit more shadow here for a reason or another. I think we've got that okay. We can leave this pretty loose. I could take some of that, I noticed that there's a bit of white, just kind of like there was raindrops kind of sitting on there as a, it's very interesting. Just kind of sitting on top, loosely. We'll see how that dries. Kind of was around here too. The only thing, see that dark? I've got to get a little bit more of that dark up there. And it's important to carry the dark around so that it's, you know, it's not just, it's balanced. Try to do it in threes if you can. So I've got to bring in more dark in here. Up here too. Or over here. Like there were layers or something. More in here. More down in this area. Here. Here. Up here wasn't too bad. How does that look? You can see a bit more depth now in there and there. Underneath here a bit more. Okay, I think it's done. So now I'm going to sign it. Now I think I'll sign it on this side, because if I sign it over here I'll lose that. So let's put it right in here with the leaf right there. You can come back to it later and just see if you're missing anything that would help to pop it out a bit more, give it some better depth. Just don't know, right? Just how the color is going to affect it. Alright, thanks for watching.